Hello and welcome to the Unplug Podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Johnny O'Callaghan. Johnny is a meditation instructor. He's a therapist. He's an actor. And I even think he's Mr. Ireland. Is that correct?
I was Irish Man of the Year.
Irish Man. Not a lot of people can say they were Irish Man of the Year.
Myself and Bing Crosby, 2016.
That's so cool. But we are so happy to have him on. And as you know, people love Johnny. His meditations will blow your mind. I think I've met my future self about 20 times. I'm always different, and that's always through my meditation with Johnny O'Callaghan. Johnny, welcome to the Unplugged Podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here. It's great to see you.
Yay. Okay, so I'm going to just tell you how we flow here. And that is that I'll just ask you where you're from, what your growing up story was all about, what were some pivotal moments, how did you get into this business anyway, and bring me up to where we are today. We're going from birth to where we are today. I just sit and listen.
I was born in Dublin, Ireland, and I went to university in Belfast, and that's when I started doing theatre. And I actually have a computer science degree that not many people know about. Mm-hmm. And after I did a computer science degree, I went to Boston to do theatre school, and I pursued being an actor. And then I got very, I think it was all over the place. I was going to New York or LA, and I needed to kind of stop. I think I was kind of going a little, just going, doing 40 things a day. And a friend said to me, have you ever thought about meditating? And she suggested I do a 10-day silent retreat called Vipassana meditation. And I was in my early 20s, and I think I was a little unsure what it really was. And but I knew I needed something, so I agreed to go. And then I arrived. It was in a little monastery in Northern Ireland, in a place called Benburb, I think. And I remember, arriving, and the day one didn't begin until the next day, which I was going, oh my God, this is going to be 12 days. And my mind was kind of freaking out. And I did 3 days of it, and I was like, oh, this is a cult. Like, my mind was going crazy. Everyone was moving. I was constantly irritated by everybody. And then I packed my bags on day 3. I was like, I'm going to get out of here. I can't do this. This is too much. This is ridiculous. And I said to the guy, hey, I'm leaving. This is just too much. And he goes, take a breath. Take a breath. And I took a breath. And all of a sudden I had this unplugging where I went, oh, that was just my thinking. There was this sort of it was just a gap. So space happened. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll stay. And I stayed, and all the layers start peeling back of all, my childhood, of all the memories start bubbling up. And it was great to witness the memories as they bubbled up and have compassion or love for myself as the memory bubbled up in meditation. And then I'd go back to the breath, watching the breath breathe me. And it was almost like I was watching these layers, and some days I'd be just bawling for an hour, like tears would be. And as I'd, be reflecting or reliving almost the memory, but because I'm looking at it from a different perspective, healing seemed to happen. It started to dissolve. And, this kept happening I think the 10th day you're allowed to speak. And I finally spoke to all these people. And I think on day 3, I was thinking of planning to murder people. I was going, these people, they don't stop moving. And I started chatting to them, and they were the most beautiful, loving people. With gorgeous stories. And then you stay for day 10 and you leave the next day. So it is 12 days. And I found out that my Nana was in hospital in Dublin. And I said, oh, I'll go visit her. And I felt very clear and very pure, almost very open. And my Nana had fallen, and her arm was all swollen, and she couldn't really move it. And I remember going visit her, and I remember just holding her hand, and I felt all this energy just move through me. And literally, I laughed and said, "Oh, bye bye." And she called an hour later saying her arm had healed, which was kind of like I was like, "What, is she on drugs?" I was like, "What is happening?" So that was where when I noticed, if I'm very clear and open, you know, life works through me. And that was I didn't quite understand it. So that was kind of early 20s, kind of, you know, not quite getting it, but feeling very pure and very and my ego very much in the background. And and then I continued, you know, acting and doing different shows in New York and different things. And and sometimes I go back to meditation and then I forget about it. And and then I started doing it again, you know, because I missed it. I missed that kind of experience of presence, of just being. Um, Rather than thinking, you know, believing my thoughts. Because sometimes as an actor, I'd be believing, you know, you can't get a dog till you're a series regular on a TV show. You'd be believing your thoughts, and that's kind of where, in meditation, I would also hear little whispers. I'd start hearing intuition, and I think I've shared this story with you. Then one pilot season, I was so burnt out, you know, always up for everything and not quite getting it, being the second choice, the third choice. And sometimes I'd be believing my thinking, but I kept hearing these. A friend asked me, would I go work in a documentary in Uganda with her? And, but my mind, I could hear my mind go, it's pilot season. You can't leave Los Angeles. You know, it's pilot season. And, but as I would sit in meditation, I would hear those little, go to Africa. I'd hear those little whispers that Spielberg, I think, calls them whispers. They just float in, you know, that are not necessarily logical. And and I said, "Oh, fuck it, can I curse?" Oh.
Yeah,
And,
sure.
and I said, "I'm going to go. I'm tired listening always to my ego, my thinking." And I said, "Why not?" You know, it's kind of. And my agent at the time, I talked to him. He said, "Oh, it's going to be a bumper pilot season. You can't leave." And as I sat in meditation, I just kept saying, "Go to Africa, go to." This kind of was sort of amazed, and I went, and that's when the story of it took, I think, 3 days to get to Uganda, and then we went on this 10-hour car ride to a little village called Kasese, and we ended up in this. The friend was working on a documentary with children living with AIDS, and we found this little orphanage, and this little toddler crawled into my lap, and he just snuggled into me like he was home, and you know, he got multicolored snot and mold and little belly, and I could hear my heart go, "He's your son." And I could hear my mind go, "Are you crazy? You're single, you're an actor, you have no money, blah, 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 blah." But I kept hearing that. And that's what I found meditation very valuable, as in to get to kind of hear your path, or my path anyway. I think I work and listen, or when I listen to other people talk, they talk a lot about, as they just sit with themselves, that they hear the more expansive part of them. And I ended up adopting my son, and he is now 19. And but when I all of a sudden, when he, you know, arrived back in Los Angeles, I used to travel a lot to act. I'd be on set traveling with my dog Charlie and my African son, which I'm sure everyone was laughing their asses off behind my back. I'm sure we were a little crazy. And but I knew as soon as he started, like, he had a preschool in Toronto, he did preschool in Los Angeles, but as soon as he started kindergarten, it was kind of time to sort of, I realized I couldn't keep following the acting work, like go to New York and do a show and then come back to LA. And I went back and did a master's in psychology at USM with a specialty of spiritual psychology, and that led me kind of all into, you know, the healing and the process and therapy. And then it made sense with my nana, although, you know, that just that idea, I think we're all capable of healing if we get out of our own way. And I just think 10 days of silent meditation forces you to kind of unplug. That's why I love the name of your you know, your practice, your studio,
Mhm.
as well. That was a long monologue. Sorry.
No, I loved it. I wanted to go, I want to go a little bit deeper on that. But first of all, your son is unbelievable. And the fact that you adopted him just because you heard your inner voice is just an amazing story, and he's enlightened your life and changed your life in so many positive ways. I follow your story on Instagram, and I just have followed your story and think it's magical. I'm curious about a couple things. One is, when did you go from acting to I'm now so busy as a therapist and I'm so busy doing, hypnotherapy, because you're also doing hypnotherapy and all different things like that.
Yeah,
Did you give up acting? Are you still acting a little bit? Like, how did that
I mean,
transition?
I still act when someone, asks me to do it. I don't really pursue it.
Mhm.
Sometimes people will ask me to do different things, and it's fun. I love the craft of acting. I think what happened was, I'd graduated and did all my studies and stuff, and I'm not sure if I shared this story, but I leased a house in Topanga Canyon,
Mhm.
and we used to live in Laurel Canyon. My son went to Wonderland Elementary, and I met this very spiritual being, in quotes, and he leased me this property in Topanga Canyon. And it was after I did also another 10-day kind of retreat. I don't think you should make any major decisions for at least 3 weeks after you do any type of retreat. any You should wait. So I think but I didn't have that wisdom at the time, and I said yes to this property that seemed too good to be true. I was thinking, oh, this might be a great place to build my practice. Topanga seemed like a very healing sanctuary, and the property was a very healing place.
Mhm.
And literally, I packed up our little house in Laurel Canyon, and which cost like thousands of dollars and blah 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 blah. And after arriving in Topanga, after a couple of weeks, there was no water, and then there was no electricity. That the person hadn't paid his utilities in months, in about 6 months. The house was in foreclosure. He hadn't shared any information, and it was fascinating. It was probably in my mind, my ego would probably go, it was probably the worst maybe choice, or if you wanted to judge the situation, it was probably the worst decision I ever made on some level, because I'm very good at jumping off cliffs and I land on my feet. But when you have a kid and stuff, it's very different. And as you know, and but I had compassion for myself, which was really odd as I went through the whole thing, as I, hired my lawyers to try and deal in, because it ended up being, a big mess. And I would sit in meditation on top of, there was a little mountain part of the property. And I really had so much compassion. I would just go, in the past, I would have been beating myself up, going, Johnny, you're so stupid. Why did you do this? Or judge, I don't, the mind would have, and I would sit in meditation, and I had nothing but, it was so it's so odd, because kind of in a way it's taken me so much to learn to love myself with my, Irish upbringing, or different kind of, and that's part of my, with raising my son, the big part of my parenting is always about making sure he loves who he is. So that was the moment where I really had compassion. And then all of a sudden my phone started ringing and the practice began to fill really, really fast. While it was very, at the beginning, it was very slow. It'd be like one, maybe two clients, three clients. Then all of a sudden, and I put it down to getting compassion for myself, because it means that no matter who shows up in front of me on the couch, that I had compassion for them, no matter what they were going to say. I had the ability to be non-judgmental and to hold space and to love them unconditionally. And I think that was the first, like, I've been a spiritual whore for many years. Like, I would do ayahuasca, all these plant medicines for years. But that was the culmination where I think I really got the idea of co-creating, and that I was in relationship with life, and watching that shift. So then all of a sudden the practices, has been full for many years. And it's amazing, it doesn't make logical sense because I don't have a business card. I don't have a website. I've never actually ever pushed it. And I put it down to that, though, compassion. That was kind of, I think then the universe knew I was ready, for want of a better, but so the transition of being busy and doing the work and loving and watching the growth of clients, it's been amazing to watch people. I think I'm good at helping people get out of their own way,
Mhm.
which is what meditation does. That's why I kind of call it meditational therapy. It's because it's got the benefits of what, you know, um, meditation gives you.
it's pretty amazing when people spend so much effort and they're trying to get clients and they're trying to make things happen and they're working so hard and running into walls all the time. It sounds like you just kind of stopped and just surrendered in a way.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
all of a sudden the flow started happening in your life
I
on a
got out
work,
my own
on
way.
a work level.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Wow.
because
It's
I see people, and I work with a lot of sort of Instagram people, and it's interesting all the the content they put out. It's
mhm,
like a kind of and I like to think of life as a school too. It's an earth school. For me, that makes sense. Like I love the idea where souls having a human experience. So I like to give it meaning. So I think there's meaning in everything. So I'm always looking for the meaning, and I find once one gets the meaning, then things shift.
mhm.
So it is interesting to watch. Because my ego thinks I should be an actor. Like
Well,
my mind would be going that, but I constantly have people showing up that want to work with me.
yeah.
You know,
Well, you're an amazing teacher and guide. And I have to say, when you used to have classes at the studio or live studio, they would be packed and you would write these magical scripts to go along with whether you were finding your spirit animal or finding your future self or, you know, we're opening up doors and seeing gnomes at some point, asking them for special gifts.
yeah,
And I just remember listening to these meditations or guided visualizations, hypnosis, whatever they were, and just going there.
yeah.
You have a magic that helps people go where they need to go and hear what they need to hear. Do you give them those tools so that they can do it without you? Do you give them those tools?
Yeah.
So,
I,
yeah.
I'm I'm teaching people to be their own therapist, their own healer, their own counselor, their own coach. Some people need coaching, some people need therapy, need healing, and
Mhm.
I think it's very important that they know where they're going. To the lighthouses, because I think sometimes we heal and then we repeat the past. Sometimes we can learn. Like when I was in my 20s, I learned to get out of my own way. And then I'll watching that healing with my nana, but then all of a sudden I was back and you lose contact with it
Yes.
as well if you're not really sitting down, right? It's so easy to kind of get lost.
Mhm.
So in a way, it's kind of helping clients really know what sort of life they want to be living, and then we just kind of reverse engineer too if they're ready, or the healing of memories, the misinterpretations. Because I notice when I do those silent retreats or when I meditate, when the memories bubble up, I really see the misinterpretation I might have made about it at one time, and that I was in resistance, that somehow I didn't think it should have happened. And then when it bubbles up, though, in meditation, there's such a, again, I love that healing is the application of loving to the parts inside that hurt. And
Mhm.
it makes complete sense. Like I'm always like, really learning to, love myself and to teach people to love, to truly love and accept. And
Mhm.
it's beautiful to kind of store, the memories different. And interesting raising Odin, because it was a great opportunity to implant positive memories, because he was 3 when I adopted him. So when he started kindergarten, they wanted to know what he was like when his first, when he first cried, or his first. There's a lot of questions where they want to know what happened to the baby in the first 6 months. And I'd be going, oh yeah, you giggle like crazy. You were such a happy little baby, and trying to get, because I think the mind is a storyteller,
Mhm.
and that's where a lot of my meditations come from. It's what story. So sometimes I'm upgrading the story, and putting implants and reliving the story, but in a transformational way. And I remember years ago, and maybe I've shared this, I don't know, when Odin was about 5, he was beginning to get in resistance to himself, because he was like, daddy, I want skin like yours. And
Mm.
we'd been talking about reincarnation, which I can't prove that exists, but I like the story of it. And we've been
Mhm.
talking about how we live many lifetimes, and that we choose everything before we come in. We choose our gender, our race, or where we want to be born, our parents. We choose that we want to be adopted. And so I was like, remember we talked about reincarnation? You've already been white. You've done that. in this lifetime you chose to be brown. And I could see him literally recalibrate and totally get it. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Like, why should he be in resistance? Why should he want to be something that he's not? Right. And it was beautiful to kind of, which has took me years to accept so many parts of myself from, sexuality, all so many different areas.
Mhm.
And then a couple of months later, he came home and said a girl in his class had said he's got skin like poop. And he goes, but I forgive her, Daddy. I remember it being an Asian girl in a past lifetime, and it was very difficult. So he was able to take the story of reincarnation and apply such compassion at 5. Like, it
Wow.
was fascinating to kind of, when you're not in your, if you've got the right stories going, right, that are not, like, most people are a loser in their story. I know I certainly was, because I think I misinterpreted
Mhm.
so much stuff as a kid, and I got confused. I think God used to feel like my best friend when I was a kid, but then religion sometimes, but God, I think, is just an unseen intelligence, or the seed becoming the tree, whatever that, energy is. And I was so connected to it as a kid, but religion sometimes confused, and then I confused myself, because I think that energy is within us all. And it's amazing watching, him not fall into the traps I did. Of course, he has his own curriculum, and he has his own journey, and goes through different experiences too. But it's that sense of connecting to the self, and then getting people. So in a way, I think, my practice is, people, I say, you're born whole, perfect, and complete, but we get conditioned away from it, and then our work is to get back in touch with
Mhm.
really the love that's as unique as your thumbprint, like that you're your own soulmate, getting back. And that seems to create a lot of shifts in people.
So your love is your own thumbprint. And I remember you used to also talk about loving your breath and
Yeah,
letting your breath love
yeah,
you.
yeah,
Love is what it is. A lot of people say that comment just disturbs me on so many levels of what you said that
yeah,
he experienced, but makes me realize like there are comments that we all have in our lives that people say to us that hurt and
yeah.
that stick, unfortunately, forever. And the fact is, he was able to have a perspective shift in that moment because of the way that you raised him. And we all have that ability to shift the perspective of what's happening on the outside of us versus what happens on the inside
And
of
also to be very aware that what people say is a reflection of them. That's
us.
what I love, that he was very aware that that's a reflection of her,
Mhm.
not him.
Right.
That's what I also love, right? The idea that he didn't take that on. Like, in the past, I would have taken it on, and yeah, I went home with it. And I'd
Yeah.
be like, oh my God, oh my God. But he was able, because of the storytelling. I think that's what, if we have the right stories.
Mm.
I think the Bible, I sometimes think religion should be in museums, but the Bible is all storytelling too. It's parables, and I do think the mind is it's very reflective. So I think, it, working on the stories we tell ourselves, we tell what we tell about the world. So it's either a magical world or it's a very depressing world, right?
Right.
Depending on what how you're perceiving it. But the fact, what most people say is a reflection of them. And
Hmm.
it's nice to see Odin not fall into that. Even today, it's amazing to hear him talk about learnings he gets about experiences. I'm pretty, again, we all go through so much stuff.
Hmm.
I don't think anyone avoids that, but it's amazing to watch him go, yeah, well, I learned this about this, and
Wow.
which I think is part of all what meditation gives us. And he's been meditating too from a very young age. He used to sit on my lap and meditate and go to agape. He used to go to agape with Michael Beckwith, and do all those little meditation classes that they had. And that was also interesting, because he'd be running around at times and people would get so annoyed. But that was, I think, part of the meditation. What does a kid running around? Just acknowledge it and go back to your breath or your mantra, right? Because that's how life is, right? Life's always coming at us, and
Right.
to be firm in that connection with ourselves, rather than constantly being, set off track or triggered as well.
It's almost like a full circle, this conversation.
Right.
It's we talked in the beginning about how you went to your first Vipassana and you we're so frustrated by everybody's movements and everybody moving around, and then ultimately now you're comfortable with the chaos around you. And I think that kind of happens in meditation as we start off. I remember at the studio, every car that went by when there were people inside of the room would make me crazy. When an alarm went off, when a fire truck went by, when I heard someone speak outside the window, I would race out.
Yeah.
And I was constantly trying to change the situation.
Mm.
But we can't change what's happening outside of us, but we can change how we respond to it. And that's really just the beauty that you don't have in the beginning. And it takes a while to really have it sink in. I know that I've changed so much since I've been doing this. And there's a meditation that you do on the Unplug app that I love so much about planting the seeds, attention. And I think everything that you stand for is really about helping people plant the good seeds, the good seeds in the mind, the good seeds in their life, the good seeds so that they can grow in a way that feels the most flourishing. So I just want to say thank you so much, Johnny, for taking so much time with me and sharing your story. I love listening to you. I want more. That's the problem with you, is I always want more of you. More of you on the app, more of you in the studio, more. I just want more, as everybody does who's with you, which is probably why you don't need a website and you don't need anything, and people just find you. How can people find you?
My email is thehealingbar@gmail.com.
The Healing Bar?
Yes, at gmail.com.
Okay. So.
Or via Unplug.
Yeah, go to Unplug Meditation. We'll hook you up with him. Actually, there's a way to book a private with Johnny on the Unplug Meditation app. You don't realize that yet. We'll tell you about that later.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.